All right, we are live. We are live for another edition of the Star Wars Book Club today. Here on a late night. What today is? Monday nights. All right, I'm just gonna wait for my other half, Beanie Moon, aka D4, to get into the chat, and then we will begin our part 3 of our Star Wars book club in preparation for Obi-Wan Kenobi that is appearing on Friday. I believe we'll get 2 episodes on Friday. I am so freaking hyped. I've been watching the trailer like 5 times today, so I am excited for Obi-Wan Kenobi. Hey, there's my girl. There's D4. What's up, D4? How was the doctor today? What did they tell you? Give me the good news. Nothing, LMAO. They just took 4 vials of blood out of me. What the hell? Were they vampires? God damn. Is there that many vials of blood? Shit. Oh my god. Bro, these damn doctors. It's like they're trying to experiment on you. They're trying to clone you, D4. They're trying to make the real life Clone Wars. Trying to fix this damn mic. But we are here, just chilling. Alright, we are reading again. If you haven't been keeping up, they needed to do 10 tests with my blood. 10, Jesus Christ. You are a unique specimen. They're trying to clone you, D4. Don't let them. If they clone you, then we're in trouble. We can't fight all the beanies. Other than that, I hope your day's been good. I don't know if you had a lot of homework today. They are trying to create the ultimate life form. Oh my god, you Shadow? You're the next Shadow the Hedgehog. I'm gonna see you. It was an average day. Well, I'm about to change that with some more Star Wars, so don't you worry. Alright, don't you worry. As always, people, we're reading Star Wars Brotherhood. If you missed part 1 and 2, this book has been fantastic so far. We are currently on chapter 16. So we are reading this in preparation for Obi-Wan Kenobi because it is coming out Friday and I am so freaking excited. I've been watching the trailer again today. I can't freaking wait. Me and Beanie is going to eat that shit up, man. And we're probably going to have reviews on our D4 channel, talking about what we thought about the first 2 episodes of that show. I am so freaking pumped, and this book is giving us like even more background context to the brothers that are Anakin, Obi-Wan, which they will be facing off on Friday. Well, I don't know if he'll meet Vader Friday, but he'll see him in the show, and then they'll have their, as they say, rematch of the century. So I am very hyped for that shit. I know D4 is hyped for that shit too. Kenobi! Bro, Darth Maul gonna be watching it too from beyond the grave. He gonna enjoy that shit too. All right, so yeah, let's see how far we can get to this thing. Hopefully, I think by the pace we're going, I should be able to finish well before Friday, actually. So, without further ado, let's get started. Oh, Beanie, is the music in the background okay? Is it good? Just let me know before we start. Yep, it's good. All right, perfecto. Now, as always, have me in the background as you listen to me read. Do anything, fall asleep to me, whatever. It's just a chill vibe we're going for, So just sit back, relax, have me in the background, and enjoy the rest of your night as I read Star Wars Brotherhood. All right, let's begin. Chapter 16, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Despite his various dealings with the Trade Federation over the last decade, including the toothless trials of Newt Gunray, this marked the first time that Obi-Wan stepped onto Cato Neimoidia's soil. Well, not exactly soil. That remained some distance below him, and instead Obi-Wan walked out of his shuttle's small loading ramp to a landing platform not unlike those on Coruscant. A long oval connected to a bridge that led into the city itself. On either side, further landing platforms of various sizes sat, from small places reserved for governmental use to a large port for commerce traffic, making this corner of Zara more of a transportation hub than anything else. Despite the functional nature of the space, the surrounding structures represented the ornate aesthetic of Cato Neimoidia, a land bridge arc juxtaposed with rows of towers with intricate carvings up and down their walls. At the oval's lips stood a group of Neimoidian leaders. He recognized Minister Yam from the other day, though he wasn't sure if the others were local representatives of Cato Neimoidia, or if they belonged to the Greater Trade Federation contingent. However, two things were certain. First, Senator Dodd had kept his word and stayed out of it, which made it more likely these were local officials. Second, standing behind them was someone new, someone who didn't seem to fit the picture. He angled his view, moving slightly to avoid drawing attention to his scouting efforts. Certain details clearly stood out, from her pale skin to the intensity of her glare. She waited in a familiar pose, one that Anakin often adopted as his default stance. Wow, so do all Darksiders stand like Anakin? That's funny. Legs apart, arms behind the back, but here the mysterious woman clearly held a constant scowl on her face despite the hood over her head, her focus tracking Obi-Wan from the moment he emerged. Dang, so this is the first time he laid eyes on Asajj's venture. This should be interesting. Master Kenobi, welcome, Emissary Amon said. I am pleased to make your acquaintance in person. The sleeve of his long purple robe draped off his outstretched arm as he spoke. High winds kicked up, flapping the sleeve and blowing the tails of his outfit, though his ceremonial headdress remained in place. Lahidin, Obi-Wan said with a slight bow, greeting the Neimoidians with their native pakpak as a sign of respect. The Republic sends its sympathies and condolences. The tragedy of your people has captured the hearts and minds of many in the Republic, and we will do everything we can to discover the true culprit behind the attack. A G2 droid scouted by, then beeped a request for permission to go aboard his craft. That's fine, he gestured inside, then waited for the droid to come out carrying his crate of supplies. I travel light, but I think you will find that I have nothing to hide. Shall I do the inspection? The woman asked, finally stepping forward. She pulled the hood off to reveal a hairless head, and her limbs remained obscured by her long cloak. Whomever you prefer, Obi-Wan leaned over and pressed the latch to unlock the lid. She brushed past the Neimoidian dignitaries, her shoulder pushing into theirs. Obi-Wan took the opportunity to give her another look and confirm his suspicion. Republic forces had seen her before, identified only as an authority within the Separatist army, a leader of some sort to be sure, though different from the recent emergence of General Grievous, our forearm boy, and unlike any other military commander they encountered. Her background, her skills, even her name required further digging, and now, the unlikely bonus of his Cato Neimoidian investigation enabled Obi-Wan to see who she was and how much of a threat she might be. Grievous. Sadly, I don't think he'll appear in this book. We'll just hear about him. I want a book just about his story. That'd be pretty cool. The woman walked past him without a word, then knelt down to look at the open crate and reached inside. Republic credit chips, she said, holding up the small stack of emergency currency. The minister will provide you with all your accommodations. You have no need for currency here, so the local government will safely bank this for you. You will, of course, receive it back with accumulated interest when you leave. I appreciate the favor. She dug further and removed each item, giving a visual inspection before sending it back inside. Obi-Wan watched, his own awareness keeping his heart rate and breathing steady while he waited for the inspection to pass. She reached the final item, the chemical scanner with the comlink secretly attached to it. This is interesting, the woman said. She stood up, her cloak flowing back down to rest, and she presented the device in front of the gathered Nemoidians. I've never seen such an elaborate plane on a scanning device. It was custom, a gift from a friend. Consider it, Obi-Wan said, a bit of a lucky charm. She tapped a finger against the underside where the alloy case attached before coming back to Obi-Wan. Holding it up as they met face to face, it's very pretty. It didn't know Jedi cared for such flamboyant things. Sentimental value? A sentimental Jedi, the woman smiled, the harsh lines of her tattooed face bending in unnatural ways. I think we'll be friends. Oh, I'll definitely be friends. I know, same, right? For the Grievous thing. Perhaps you can have it when I'm done with my investigation. It would be a lovely accessory, and it looks like it's even my color. She put the device back into the crate, then clamped the lid shut. The Jedi is clean, she announced, her long cloak whipping out to reveal a hint of skirt underneath as she turned on her heel. Come, emissary, said Minister Yam. We will send your belongings to your quarters. This shuttle. He gestured to a small transport craft on a connected platform, one likely to be used for city-to-city vehicles, will take us to the disaster area. They walked in silence, though Obi-Wan noticed the mystery woman match his exact pace stride for stride. I'm sorry, Obi-Wan said. I didn't catch your name. Ventress, he said. Asajj Ventress. Our girl? A pleasure to finally meet a Jedi. Count Dooku speaks so highly of your order. What a bunch of bullshit. Bunch of bullshit they're talking. They started with the formalities, a basic tour of the government of offices and the most notable landmarks of Zara, the brightly lit mix of business and artistry, from the hanging towers below the capital's biggest stone archway to the open-air ground theater of judgment where trials and debates took place. The city place looked truly gilded from the air designs and architecture unique to the culture and unlike anything else Obi-Wan had seen in his journeys across the Republic. Elegant and sophisticated in ways far different than, say, Naboo, while still taking advantage of the planet's unique natural wonders, structures jutting out in directions simply impossible elsewhere. The tour itself was short-lived, and soon they soared through the rolling fog of Cater Nemoidia, a long descent that revealed just how high up the rocky spires of this world were. Though he had watched hollows showcasing the topography of the planet, none of it did justice to the overwhelming girth. No wonder they had the ability to anchor entire cities. It's quite majestic, isn't it? Have you ever seen anything like it? Obi-Wan said, a strategic question to goad mysterious Ventress into revealing more about herself. Not in person. I have not either. I've traveled planets with all forms of environmental oddities, but nothing quite like this. She shook her head with a breath, then straightened up. Let's dispense with the pleasantries. You wish to ask me something, Kenobi. Her direct line of questioning caught Obi-Wan's diplomatic sensibilities off guard. Perhaps that was by design, given her demeanor. I'm trying to be polite. Obi-Wan tilted forward in his seat. Around them, the Nemoidians remained silent, though he was certain they listened. Unless you feel you have something to hide. Something, Obi-Wan said. Suddenly, all of the experience strategically arguing with Anakin proving fruitful. That makes you untrustworthy. Ventress's head tilted as she bit her bottom lip, a huff of amusement coming out just enough for Obi-Wan to hear. In fact, the other passengers may have missed it. While my master has great respect for your order, he also understands that it is the political tool of the Republic. If you recall, she gave a knowing nod. That is one of the reasons he left it. She referred to Dooku as master. Was that an intentional representation of hierarchy within the Separatist leadership, or a slip revealing something further? Fair point. Because of that, he has sent me to oversee your investigation and interactions with the Nemoidians. She sucked in a breath, holding it as if to tease him, to ensure that there is no evidence of corruption. Corruption? Now I hear nice and clear. Oh wait, finally got earbuds working. Oh, perfect, yes. Alrighty. Her eyes locked with his, a menacing leer that felt as much a dare as a threat. Fortunately, Obi-Wan had dealt with worse. He did, after all, see Anakin through some very turbulent teenage years. Well then, he responded with a tense calm, presenting an equally lengthy pause. Then his tone retreated, going back to the standard diplomat's voice as if he was simply talking to another politician on Coruscant. I look forward to working with you, he added, putting his hand out to shake in good faith. She looked at his outstretched hand, then back up to read his face. He responded in kind with a polite smile and waited without any movement, like an AI hollow awaiting input before animating its canned response. Likewise, she finally said, taking his hand. Oh, they're friends. If you had a hard time during the teenage years, you won't like adult him. Damn. Oh, facts. That's true. Adult Anakin wasn't any better than his teenage years, I doubt. The damage was, and we're gonna see that shit in Obi-Wan. I can't wait. The damage was worse than Obi-Wan had expected. They started with an aerial view constantly circling as the Nemoidian inspector explained the disaster simulation they created to get a sense of how the entire structure fell, speed, angle, tilt, how fires from the initial explosion spread to other areas, the way those fires then weakened other structures prior to impact. And though Ventress presented a cold and unmoving front, he noticed the air shifted around her when the inspector described the way bodies were flung out from the structure during its nosedive to the planet's surface. And in very pragmatic terms, when he described the radius around the structure in which corpses had so far been recovered. And that was just the first pass. The closer they got, the more unsettling the visuals were, from the still smoking fires to the imploding buildings, the crumbled remains of their gold plating reflecting the licks of flames. By estimates, we have recovered about a third of the bodies so far. Were there any survivors? Yes, luck was on their side. Our analysis team wants to discuss the circumstances with them to see if they can identify a pattern, some type of safety parameter we can build into our infrastructure. He looked down, his green skin turning more ashen as his eyes closed, but most of them refused to talk about it. Look, Ventress said, interrupting the discussion. Stop the shuttle. The flight paused, hovering in midair. Ventress took out a scope, then stood by the cockpit. There it is, she said. Come here, Kenobi. What is it? She handed over the scope and pointed at an angle off the flight path. Obi-Wan brought the scope to his eyes, the target area already highlighted in a bright green box within the display. The scope zoomed in, its internal computer interloping details about the damage so fast that Obi-Wan couldn't digest it all. But the visual highlight was enough. This was clearly the remains of a strut built to secure the city block between spires. A charred burst indicating the center of an explosion. The blast points, she said, as if by design, 5 further green boxes lit up, each framing clear burn marks. How many do you count? 6. 6 blast points, each precisely laid out with exact spacing, angles to one letter probably calculated by computer. The destruction of the shredded end of the master strut blanketed over a lot of the finer evidence. But Obi-Wan had seen enough in his time, including his few weeks being around the clones, to understand that Ventress was right, and bounty hunters, pirates, mercenaries, while it remained possible that they could do something like this, the odds of that felt low, especially after Dex's report. 6 blast points distributed specifically to maximize damage given the load on the strut. I would consider the military precision, wouldn't you? Perhaps, Obi-Wan said, one eye on Yam in front of the craft. Droids can be precise as well. Yes, they can. That they can. Such an astute observation. I can see why they call you a master. She turned to Yam as well. And this is just a single strut. Who knows what we'll find elsewhere? Though an exhale of frustration fought to come out, Obi-Wan caught it and instead offered the scope to Ventress in a controlled gesture. This certainly requires more investigation. Indeed, she took the scope back with a harsh tug that pulled on his fingers. If there are no objections, Eam said, I would like to land and show you the destruction on the surface level. Please do. It is imperative that I see the entire range of destruction before I start my investigation. I promise I will get to the bottom of this. The shuttle chair creaked as Obi-Wan shifted in his seat to look directly at Ventress. Perhaps through mutual cooperation we can find some common ground between our governments. Cooperation? Ventress settled back into her chair, legs crossed and arms folded. Light from outside reflected the shuttle's cramped quarters, and Obi-Wan caught a glint of a metallic reflection by her hip before she adjusted her cloak. Certainly, if you can win me over. What a proper meeting. If you had a hard time doing the no, that was the last thing you said. I thought you typed something new. I like their initial meeting. We're so used to them fighting in the Clone Wars that just them talking and just chilling seems kind of weird. But Obi-Wan did have a weird kind of flirtatious kind of rivalry with Asajj Ventress, so it's nice to see where it's kind of starting. Chapter 17, Anakin Skywalker. Chancellor Palpatine, that's me. I know I'm right. I'm like, this is interesting. I know, right? I'm like, this is I know, right? Just that, yeah, just them talking and chilling like that. That's it's so weird. In chapter 17, Anakin Skywalker. Chancellor Palpatine paced in front of the group of standing Jedi Knights, Anakin on the far end. You are the greatest hope and our guardians, he said, lying through his teeth. Coruscant's infinite stream of building lights visible behind him through the window spanning the length of his office. Particularly now, the Republic needs you more than ever. Finding a growing enemy is a challenge, not just physically, but philosophically, morally. You represent the best chance for lasting peace throughout the galaxy. You are Jedi, Palpatine said. Bro, I wonder how he's feeling when he's talking about this bullshit. He's probably like so angry on the inside. His voice taking on a grim sheen, as if the accumulated talking and tasks of the day wore him out. Knights of the Republic. The group gave mild, polite applause, a smattering of noise that barely rose above the sound of ventilation. They each waited, the same group as yesterday save for Cirrus Okent, who had already been assigned to join a clone battalion flying a sudden strike on Braca. Hey, Braca, the junk planet we play in Fallen Order. That's cool. I would find it hilarious if the book literally said lying through his teeth. I know, right? Bro, sometimes they do like say what's going on in their minds, but that was just me adding that. And Palpatine gestured out to the hallway. The short ceremony now concluded. The Jedi marched in PS single file, Palpatine receiving each one with a congratulations and thank you for defending peace and justice. Anakin was third from the end, and though he and the Chancellor enjoyed a less formal relationship, a guise of etiquette felt necessary here. Thank you, Chancellor, he said. May the Force be with you. Master Skywalker, please do wait a minute, Palpatine said, pausing the line. I need to speak with you about Master Kenobi's mission to Cato the Moidia. Yes, Chancellor, he said with a slight head bow, his voice as docile as a youngling acknowledging his teacher. The urban, when heard, gave the final acknowledgement of the group before shuttling out. Both Palpatine and Anakin watched her leave, waiting for the double doors to slide shut and seal them in the room alone. You are concerned about Obi-Wan, Anakin said as Palpatine walked over to the small tray of refreshments delivered for the brief meeting. Outside the massive transpire steel window, Coruscant's sunset started to transition the day's oranges to purples with lines of speeder traffic whooshed by. Calf? Palpatine asked as pouring himself a cup. Sure, Anakin said, thinking he could use a little perk before seeing Padme, a single shot of cream. There you are, my friend, Palpatine said, putting a cup on the visitor's side of his broad desk. Sit down, Palpatine eased into his elaborate chair with a slight groan, then sipped on the small white mug in his hand. Now tell me, how is Jedi knighthood? Anakin took the cup, a blink of confusion on his face. I thought you wanted to talk about Obi-Wan's mission. I simply wanted to catch up, he said with a raised eyebrow. It is so rare these days to find time for quiet conversation, don't you think? But if you want to discuss Master Kenobi, I am happy to. The right thing to say, the Jedi thing to say, would be to shrug it off and instead chat about the upcoming aid mission to Langston. But the Chancellor is no ordinary politician or Republic dignitary. That's right, he's a Sith Lord. What's Palp drinking? I know, right? Probably some Jawa juice. He had been there for Anakin since his early days within the Jedi, seemingly always tuned into Anakin's turbulent feelings. In moments of loneliness or frustration, Palpatine popped up in the timeliest manner, at chance hallway meeting or crossing the paths at the landing platform. Boy, this boy playing great chess. Or scenarios like this, when they would happen to be in a meeting together and Palpatine would find a way to grab a few extra minutes with Anakin. Not always with Calf, but sometimes. That open hand of friendship always encouraged an honest conversation. The feeling, how are you, was a true inquiry and not just a default greeting, especially since they'd both been busy, the chaos of the war's quick escalation throwing him all over the galaxy. Not to mention time spent on the move to get married. Has anything troubled you lately? We haven't even had time to discuss the happenings of Geonosis. Palpatine took a sip and shook his head. How fast life changes these days. Actually, Anakin started, the words formed in him, wanting to push out without any regard for secrecy to tell someone besides Padme about the horrors of that night on Tatooine. Someone older, wiser, who clearly cared for his well-being. Someone who didn't judge, which was why he couldn't tell any Jedi about it, not even Obi-Wan. Anakin, I may be a busy man, but for the next few minutes I am here merely as your friend and your future master. You can tell me anything. Polite creases formed around his mouth as Palpatine smiled. Please feel free to confide to me whatever your whatever concerns you. You have permission to be honest, and I will not judge. While I do work with the Jedi, I am not beholden to their rules. Right before Geonosis, Anakin started before pausing, but wasn't a hesitation. Instead, it was as if all those feelings and memories competed to get out, causing a log jam in his throat. My mother died. Palpatine's lips parted, his brow tilting in concern. My boy, I am so sorry for your loss. She didn't just die, the words broke through, a storm raging with them. Flashes from the night flickered by, the way the lightsaber pierced the wall, the dance of the flame over his mother's cold, open eyes, the thump from the severed heads of the sand people hitting the ground. Damn. She was murdered, and Anakin, stopped himself, letting it all formulate. Before that night, Anakin thought he knew pain. His first few days in the Jedi Order, the undying ache of missing his mother, compounded with the sorrow of losing Qui-Gon Jinn, all of that magnified the way the Jedi seemed to talk and act with an intentional calm distance. Those dark times were a speck of dust compared with the endless desert of that night. That moment when his mother's body went limp, unable to finish her final word. Rage, despair, disbelief. None of those words aptly describe the unseemly primal explosion he felt in that moment. Even now, just thinking about it allowed such a beast to crack through his defenses until he took a steady breath and pushed it back so words could form. I killed them, the Sand People. Unlike the moment in the Lars homestead, Anakin wasn't expelling grief through searing words and falling tears. This came out calm, tempered, equal parts admission and confirmation. They took her life and I took theirs. Palpatine set his calf mug down with a clink, then reached over the warmth of his palm resting over Anakin's mechanical one. Though the hand was made of wire and alloy, he felt the connection in ways so different from most of the moments in his life. They killed your mother, he said, his weathered voice slow and deliberate. Of course you wanted revenge. How could anyone not when facing such an injustice? It seems like simple mathematics to me. No, this was not an admission, this was a validation, and he knew that the Chancellor would give it because he always understood in ways that Jedi couldn't. Yeah, there's a reason for that. As if reading Anakin's mind, Palpatine sat up and quickly asked the perfect question. How many Jedi actually care about other people? Anakin started with his reflexive response. Attachment is forbidden. I know the dogma, but be honest. Let's take, say, behind the Chancellor, a Republic cruiser emerged from below and the window line, hovering upward until its ion drives came alive in a burst, powering the ship into the sky. Master Windu, he is perhaps the Order's greatest warrior, most powerful Force adept. But do you think he really cares about people? Like a button pushed in his mind, Anakin saw Mace's glare, heard his condescending monotone speech, felt the air of judgment that naturally came with him. He knew the Jedi Master would do anything to complete the mission, to dedicate himself to seeing justice in the Republic. But did he care about anyone? Not, Anakin said slowly, in the same way you or I do. You see, Master Windu can go on for hours about shatter points, but perhaps the lack of empathy is his very own shatter point. Palpatine gave a weary grin, his eyes offering an empathy that Anakin so rarely felt in his life. You care, Anakin. You have an immense heart. Don't let the Jedi take it from you. Your heart makes you a better person. It makes you a stronger person. Bro, pop out here. What a coincidence. Old people are so wise. Palpatine, sad story, but I don't care. I know, right? His mind is probably like, I'm glad you did that shit. One step further to being my apprentice. Palpatine's such a bitch, but I can imagine he seems so nice. Like, bro, I guess there's a reason why people didn't know he was a Sith Lord. Like, if you just see this nice old man, you'd never guess. Even though he has this like slight grins that you're like, Though the words didn't directly reflect the tale of the Sun Dragon, it touched on it just enough that Anakin pictured his mother, sitting on the edge of his bed. Had he been alone? Not with the Chancellor, not with Padme, not with Obi-Wan. He may have cracked, but he wouldn't let himself right now, and instead he pushed all those feelings aside. I'm worried about Obi-Wan, he blurted out, changing the subject to the most obvious choice. Palpatine laughed quietly and picked his mug back up. You see, you are a person who cares. I should be going with him. How can they send me to escort an aide drop-off when Obi-Wan is going alone into enemy territory? Ah, don't call them the enemy. Kaden Moya is neutral after all. Palpatine took an extra long sip of his drink, the pause long enough for a new storm to gather in Anakin's mind. The enemy, of course they were. All framing of neutrality and politics disappeared, and instead, All he thought of was Naboo a decade ago. Though he really came face to face with any Nemoidians, he saw their machines of war up close, and Padme, she had nearly lost her life, her planet in a desperate quest for liberty. If there was an enemy, it would be them. Despite their ties to Newt Gunray and his ties to the Separatists, Palpatine said with a sigh. Anakin tried to temper his feelings, but mere mention of Newt Gunray fanned the flames. But you are right, Master Kenobi should have brought you, unofficially as backup. If you thought so, Anakin asked, why didn't you say so? The question was blurted out in a way that he immediately regretted, his feelings getting the better of him. Palpatine didn't seem to take offense, and instead smiled again as a response. A valid question. You see, I only have the authority to prove the framework of the mission. Perhaps if the Jedi and the military were further integrated, I might have more say. The execution of it comes down to the Jedi themselves. They set the mission parameters. Count Dooku set the mission parameters, Anakin said, his feelings settling. Mission parameters can always be changed in politics, military missions, or life, and the truly wise know when to make those changes. He straightened up, finishing his calf. Bro, this book really likes drinks and food. That's what I've been realizing. What a nice politician, man. I know, right? He's so kind. I have taken enough of your time. Your firstly assignment as a Jedi Knight is tomorrow, is it not? Yes, and initiations are going to be on it. Anakin decided not to finish his drink. His hands rested across his lap, a formal pose as he tried to ground himself from the whiplash of emotions. It's concerning. I understand. I personally requested that change, not just on your mission, but many missions. Younglings aren't ready. That may be true, Palpatine tented his fingers as he swiveled his chair sideways. The Chancellor looked outside, the color of sunset tinting his face. But this war may last longer than we hope, and as the younglings grow into Padawans, they must feel comfortable around the clones. We must prepare for every possibility. I hope they do not have to face the horrors of war. Yeah, okay. But I would rather them be prepared than not, wouldn't you? Yes, of course, Anakin said reflexively, though doubts still tugged at him. Obi-Wan had spoken with concern about lines blurring between the Jedi Order and the military. Bringing younglings into the mix seemed to push that even further. Anakin, you should set that aside for one evening. Rest up, he said, and enjoy your time before your first mission. It is a milestone. You should be proud. I know I am. They stood up in unison and then walked slowly back to the entryway, as they'd done possibly 100 times now since Qui-Gon brought Anakin to Coruscant. Do you have any special plans to commemorate your achievements? Plans? Whether or not Padme came up with anything concrete to do? He'd find out soon. The specifics of the plans didn't matter, though. He'd hoped to avoid politics on their final night. What mattered was spending time with his wife before the galaxy tore them apart yet again. Someday he might get used to it, or someday maybe they wouldn't have to do this dance anymore. It will be quiet, Anakin said as the large double door slid open. I plan on meditating. Of course, Palpatine responded with the same assuring smile Anakin had seen for the past decade, as a Jedi Knight should. Oh boy, that's the end of chapter 17. Boy, pop. First cake, then soup, now coffee. Yeah, I think it's their version of coffee, although I don't know what they put in that coffee. Yeah, clearly the person who was writing this book was drinking and eating a lot of shit, because I read a few Star Wars books and this is the most time they've mentioned any type of like food or drink, which is kind of funny. Oh, I need to get a better chair. My back is kind of uncomfortable. Alright, chapter 18, Obi-Wan Kenobi. The rest of the day played out with frustrating level of bureaucracy during the up-close investigation on the planet's surface. Obi-Wan putting his tools to good use, all while the mysterious Asajj Ventress stayed close by, shadowing him in her hood and cloak. She offered little input during the entire time, stoically observing. He considered asking her opinion on debris trajectory from the explosion or the decay of lingering chemical compounds, but it didn't seem necessary. She clearly came with an agenda, even if that agenda only involved trying to intimidate Obi-Wan into making a mistake of some sort. He took his recordings and scans, made his analysis, and brought them back to his quarters, acting as if nothing bothered him. After that came a diplomatic reception, as if the context of a societal shattering disaster never took place. Obi-Wan sat and enjoyed a well-prepared meal, local cuisine, courtesy of Zara's finest professional chefs. Yet despite the mix of exquisitely cooked dishes, and here we go with food again, this shit making me hungry. Writing takes a lot of brain power to need to consume, that's very true. Yet despite the mix of exquisitely cooked dishes and fancy table linens, the conversation continued around matters of the bombing, a desperate plea for answers wrapped up in the guise of a dinner party, all while Ventress kept a measured distance from Obi-Wan, always seated 3 or 4 chairs away, but when he spoke with others, her eyes seemingly never wavered from tracking him. And even as he retired to his quarters for the evening, he stretched out with the Force, scanning for the presence of someone following him the entire time. It didn't happen, and he let himself indulge in a meditative rest for an hour, a mental and physical restoration to better fuel his inner discipline for the task ahead. Scanners hung in pouches on his belt, and he draped himself in his long cloak to better blend in with the dark, foggy evening. Then he stepped out the window, a simple escape guided by the Force. Shortly after, he acquired a small craft through persuasion, slightly aided by Force trickery. You will give me some ride. That level of rule bending didn't sit well with him, but his resources were limited, particularly since Ventress had confiscated his credit chips, and it was imperative that 0 electronic records tie the Republic back into this. Without physical currency, he instead worked with the realm of his simpler minds. The personal vehicle lacked the comforts of a Naborian shuttle, but it got the job of flying him down the disaster zone done. Not that the data he collected earlier was bad, but given Ventress's constant presence, a deeper look at the situation was necessary to verify his findings and collect new data. In the dark, the thick fog wove in between the fallen urban sprawl to create a near black atmosphere, only interrupted by some still smoldering fires and occasional clusters of orange glow from bioluminescent oil oozing from Cato Nemoidia's native surface trees. Obi-Wan let the Force guide him, his instincts pulling him toward blast points and debris, taking samples to refine calculations that would hopefully provide deeper insight into what really happened. Whether a stunt or coincidence, Ventress moved with the scope earlier today, focused suspicion on the Republic, and it was up to him to dispel any assumptions. He examined the area for well over an hour on his own, the constant data from scanners creating a continuous refinement of the Republic's simulation on his datapad. He unfolded his chemical scanner, the frick alloy case detached and hidden in his quarters, then began identifying the gaseous compounds from still noxious fumes when something interrupted his concentration. Or someone. Movement. Quick, nearly silent, but enough for it to cause a detectable blip in the Force. Obi-Wan curled the scanner shut, then slipped into his belt pouch. Though he remained crouched, staying still to avoid creating any sound while his ears picked up only the wind and the howl of local wildlife. He needed more, and he took the calculated risk of turning with controlled movements, keeping his weight steady to not kick out any flecks of gravel at his feet. He pulled out the Jedi macro binoculars, a smaller scope than what Ventress used earlier, enough to easily carry around him without the computational capabilities found in her equipment. The eternal screens came to life, gears whirring as he zoomed and panned to find the source. Then he saw it, or rather her. A Nemoidian female, a tall frame and long fingers gave it away, along with a general sense of identity detected through the Force. But not a typical member of the Trade Federation, not the usual stately, regal robes and headdresses, and not the standard helmet and shoulder armor of the guards, or the bulky armor of Nemoidian heavy troops. This silhouette appeared somewhere in between, light enough for movement but plated enough to withstand heavy fire. It was a commando's outfit, built for a balance among movement, stealth, and protection. She held a small device in her hand, possibly very similar to Obi-Wan's scanners and tools, though she worked with a soldier-like, methodical cadence, completely different from the strange sense of competition he got from Asajj Ventress. She moved the device up and down, focused on a single point before leaping onto a ledge, landing with a balance that held steady even with the ledge crumbling away. This repeated several more times, an impressive nimbleness to her movements despite clearly not being force-powered. The figure stood up, jolting with a forward purpose that made Anakin seem like a lumbering tank in comparison. She climbed and vaulted over cracked structures, a gracefulness to her swift movements made extra impressive given that a larger snapper rifle was strapped to her back, and her finger tapped what might have been comlink at the side of her. At the side of her head. Obi-Wan panned the macro binoculars to follow, wondering where she might be going, when the snap of a twig caught his attention. He stood in one movement, buckling the macro binoculars to his belt while drawing his lightsaber. The blue blade sprang to life with a snap hiss, its cool glow illuminating the space. Obi-Wan stretched out, sensing all of the echoes of life around him, filtering out the insects and wildlife to get to. He turned, no longer needed to scope to see the figure from earlier, on the second story of a half-destroyed building, except rather the scanning materials or debris. She now knelt in firing position, her sniper rifle trained on him. Obi-Wan had raised his lightsaber into the defensive position when he heard something not new behind him. Freeze, Jedi! Boy, Obi-Wan's in the mess again. As usual. Obi-Wan always gets to the hard missions, every time. But that's part of what makes him the best. Or at least the most equipped. He did beat our boy Darth Maul after all. So after that shit, he can end anything. Chapter 19, Anakin Skywalker. Poor guy's been through a lot, I know, right? When he died in episode 4, I'm like, he finally gets to rest. Good for you, bro. Your whole life's been a struggle. An aid mission. Anakin kept telling himself that over and over. He was supposed to be an aid mission with the 302nd Battalion, arranging logistics with Commander Theo for distribution to an embattled mining district on the planet Langston, just outside the Augustus Nebula. Langston's mining industry produced a full gamut of materials, but the abundance of Nieks made it coveted resources for shipyards, and there was no surprise that droid armies tried to seize it earlier on in this war, with devastation hitting the biggest cluster of mining towns on the northeast section of its largest continent. Anakin should have been thinking about maximizing efficiency. Some areas would need food, some areas would need Bacta and first aid, some would need shelter and infrastructure, and others simply need help rebuilding along with defensive preparations should the Separatists strike again. So many of their tasks required mind-numbing repetition, from cataloging the cargo manifest to reviewing drop points to plan distribution teams based on environmental hazards. Lists upon lists, all to handle the endless crates of medical tools, rations, and other supplies needed for a region that suffered an early major battle of the war. Yet, Anakin cursed Durban for offering to take the lead with Theo. It seemed like a selfish gesture on her part, given that the several thousand supply crates required sorting into shipment groups, but now he realized that she tricked him, because no amount of training prepared him for this. Trapped in the tunnel of light speed on a blistering path from Coruscant to Langston, Anakin stood there in front of the worst mistake of his life. 4 younglings waiting in front of him, an endless barrage of Master Skywalker echoing off the walls of the cargo hold. He was supposed to be on an aid mission, not trying to control the sheer unrelenting chaos of babysitting. Bro, why did Anakin set it down there, bro? I would love to be around younglings. They seem like a hell of amount of fun. No wonder he killed them so easily. Dang, the guy was waiting for it. Hold on, I can't answer all questions at once. This was worse than the morning at the Jedi Temple. In the temple, a sense of decorum existed, the venue providing the familiarity of rules and guidelines. But here on a ship, with only 2 newly promoted Jedi Knights and a bunch of clones not trained for helping 4 younglings, might as well have been 60. A rapid-fire blend of so many voices repeatedly yelling Master Skywalker at once. Even finding a centering rhythm within the Force seemed impossible amid the noise and tugs in so many directions. A confusing so very different from the battlefield. The sound of a lightsaber burst past the voices, a green training blade sparking to life. No, we're not using those right now, Anakin said. I'm going to collect all the lightsabers and everyone ignites another one. Show us your lightsaber. How many battle droids have you destroyed? I bet he almost killed Count Dooku himself. Anakin wanted to bury his head in his hands and scream. All of the discipline he trained into himself melting away at the sheer illogical nature of a younglings. Somehow they got the younger batch of younglings on this trip, and all just old enough to be corralled on a cruiser with proper supervision, of course. Except, weren't there 5 younglings? One youngling's trained lightsaber lit up, leading a push and a skirmish and yelling all in the seconds. Anakin took the scan for the other youngling, the older Zabrak girl. Stop, Anakin yelled. A lightsaber is not a toy. The youngest of the bunch, a Fiero named Connus Dave, stood with trembling lips, tears welling up. What I mean is, Anakin said, his voice calm, this weapon is your life. You have to treat it with respect. Show us, yes, show us. He sighed, giving into the fact that he wouldn't be winning any teachings awards for this lesson. Okay, look, everyone stand in line over there and don't move. His lightsaber burst into full view, the shimmering blue blade, longer and brighter than the youngling's training versions. It is a weapon of precision and elegance. It requires the utmost control. Now what? He was improvising about lightsabers and he run out of things to say. Unless he went into the wiring schematics, this really was where the urban when heard would have done much a better job than him, because she used two short shoto blades. Her training involved a unique form of lightsaber combat that emphasized dagger-like slicing and acrobatics, a demonstration that would be much more entertaining than Anakin's technique. Then an idea popped into his head. When you can really control it, you can do this. He passed his lightsaber from his mechanical hand to his organic one. The trick he had in mind too risky to do without feeling completely in sync. His hand opened up, fingers letting go, but the lightsaber remained. He took a step back, a deep connection with the Force enabling a hold on the weapon as a muscle and nerves were grabbing it, and it floated in mid-air. Whoa, the younglings cried out. Why didn't he try this earlier? Anakin dipped a finger and it twirled left, then another finger and it twirled right. It then lifted up and down, a colorful light show in form of the legendary weapon of the Jedi Knights, and even added a somersault over the floating lightsaber before sucking it back with the grip of his mechanical hand. Master Skywalker, you don't want to see that lightsaber. Yeah, I know, right? They do not want to see that lightsaber. About to chop them up in a few years. Then he shut it down. That was something he could trust the hand with. The younglings applauded, raving with, "Did you see? And how did he do that?" and other exclamations. That seemed to win them all over for now, except he was still missing the Zabrak girl. He looked all around the cargo bay, and between the crates and passing clones, he spied her. She'd been there all along, just sitting in the corner by herself. "Younglings," he said, "now I would like you to meditate on what you just saw for 10 minutes. "Aww," they groaned, but as a group they collectively sat and closed their eyes. Maybe simple tricks were all that was necessary to get them to listen. If not, then the urban would have to grab the spotlight for the next round. She owed him that. As quiet set in, Anakin's ability to concentrate returned for the first time since stepping in front of the younglings. But with the focus came an odd sensation, and in fact he realized that he should have recognized what his Zabrak girl was all along, because the vacuum in the Force that he'd sensed throughout the temple circled all around her. "Are you alright?" he said, approaching the Zabrak. She opened her eyes and the vacuum disappeared, the currents of the Force resuming their normal flow. He should have remembered her name. They'd all been introduced hours earlier, but he went with honesty here, kneeling down in front of her. "Hey, it's okay, you can talk to me. I'm sorry, but I've forgotten your name." "Mil Alabeth." "Mil, I'm Anakin. Is something the matter?" "Hyperspace can make you nauseous the first few times if you're new to it." "It's not that," she said, shaking her head. "It's something else." Mil appeared to be Zabrak equivalent of his age when he left Tatooine, perhaps a tiny bit older, and likely past the age of a simple Force tricks being impressive. "Well," Anakin said, "we're going to be here a while, so if there's something on your mind, you can tell me." Now this was improvising. Handling younglings of any type was a foreign to Anakin as Padme's political negotiations, but he couldn't contain his instinctive urge to care, to try to help. Mil started. She huffed out a sigh, then looked at his eyes. "You promise you won't get mad?" "I promise. You can count on me." Mil leaned forward, close enough that Anakin felt her breath. "I don't know if I belong in the Jedi Order." Anakin took in several slow and controlled breaths, so many things flashing through his mind. Qui-Gon's certainty in stating he is the chosen one before the Jedi Council, the peace parade on Naboo, standing proud with his newly shorn Padawan here, endlessly bickering with Obi-Wan, Padme, so many thoughts about Padme. Tatooine, the Sand People, his mother, all those things tied intrinsically with his decision to leave home and join the Order. And yet, through it all, he too never felt like he quite belonged, and this was the first time anyone had ever said it. Mil's breath quickened, a tremble coming to her voice. "I'm just kidding. Forget I said." "I understand," Anakin said in a controlled, calm voice, because he did. "Tell me more, youngling." I feel the Force," she said, her hand balled into a fist, "but it's overwhelming. I know the Order can do good. I know the Jedi are guardians of peace, but," she turned, Anakin now facing her tight black tail of hair. "But the war, the fighting, the violence, I feel all of that through the Force. I can't explain it, but it's too much, and I don't understand why the Jedi are peacekeepers and all the other initiates can't wait to get their weapons, and we're in the battlefield with soldiers. Justice sometimes requires a heavy hand. But from the Jedi, she turned back to Anakin, It doesn't feel right. The other day It's okay, youngling, you're not in trouble. I appreciate your honesty. What happened yesterday? The gathering. She bit down on her lip as she replayed events in her mind. I was supposed to go, but the bombing at Cave Mordia, I just couldn't think about lightsabers and crystals. I don't even want my lightsaber. I just want to help others. Dang, this kid's more of a Jedi than most of the Jedi. Shit. Damn, this kid is having an existential crisis. Can't blame her. I know, right? If the other Jedi's felt more like her, they might have not been executed. She's more Jedi than most of them. Shit. I just want to help others. I don't. Her eyes dropped for a second before they looked back onto his, as if her body required a confession. I don't know if I want to feel the Force. Suddenly, it all made sense. The vacuum in the Force, both yesterday and here. She wasn't in meditation. This youngling was trying to quiet the Force, possibly even cut it off. Yeah. Anakin knew. He recognized it because for a very brief moment during his darkest, loneliest days shortly after becoming a Padawan, with his peers lacking compassion for him and Obi-Wan, constantly flustered, and his heart yearning for the comfort of his mother, a spike of anger shut him off from the Force. For a flash, it did the trick. It tempered his feelings, it quieted his mind, it soothed his fears, but then it was gone, not nearly enough. Because while that avoided connection, it also pushed him further into the corner. Oh, my thing stopped. Ooh, hold on. Yes. For a flash, it did a trick. Because while I avoided connection, it also pushed him further into the corner, and it was at that moment he realized that he needed to reach into the Force rather than avoid it. Anakin looked at the other younglings, still sitting in line in meditative poses. Though the occasional jabs and giggles came from them, Palpatine's words from getting the initiate used to war replayed in his mind. In front of him, Mill turned, Anakin sensing a cloud over her, an internal shame like for questioning the order. Anakin also understood that part all too well. I've always felt a little out of place my entire life, even with the order. You? She looked at him, eyes wide. But aren't you the chosen? Don't believe everything you hear, Anakin said with a laugh, though he groaned inside. Not again. Half the time people said it to him in awe, the other half in jest, and on occasion in condescension, usually from Mace Windu. No matter how much he succeeded, no matter how much he proved himself, things always seemed to come to that, and not in the way Qui-Gon intended. Qui-Gon saw it as a path for Anakin. Whether or not that played out, he didn't know. But everyone else seemed to think it was a title, like a sports champion. He shook his head, going to a better place. My mother once told me, always believe in the strength of your heart, and she was right. Whatever things people said about me, their assumptions, it doesn't matter. What you believe in your heart is your path. When I questioned the Force, even disconnecting from it, that is what brought me back. That is what brought me through. Anakin took her hand, and with his mechanical hand, she looked at the glove, a look of shock on her face that came and went. He understood. Not everyone knew about his limb. I know how you must be feeling, that you don't fit in or your path feels elusive. That it's difficult to master your connection with the Force. But that's part of the journey, your journey, and you will find General Skywalker. Sorry, he said to Mill before standing up. Captain Sparks patiently waited for him, helmet with bright yellow lines tucked under his arm. Yes, Sparks. Sir, Commander Theo needs you on the bridge. Apparently, the intended drop zone has been damaged to the point that we won't be able to land. We'll need to find someplace new. Understood. I'll be right there. He turned to Mill, then looked at the younglings, the white-skinned Mon Calamari peeking at them, a single yellow eye. Listen, controlling your link to the Force is something that takes time and practice. Some struggle with it more than others, but do me a favor. What's that, Master? Don't try to run away from the Force. Lean into it. Reach into it. Control it. Anakin tried his best at a reassuring smile. If I could learn to do it, so can you. She nodded, though it wasn't clear whether his words really crystallized in her. At least not yet. As for the war, the Jedi do a lot of good for the Republic. Sometimes aggressive negotiations are just as important as bringing medical supplies. I know that's confusing, but it's true. Both can benefit the galaxy. I understand you. I've been where you are, so be patient and we'll talk more later, alright? Mill nodded, her features softening. Anakin empathizing with the simple need for someone to listen. But for now, yes, Master. If you really want me to be handy, Anakin pointed at the initiates, who pretended to meditate but really kept poking at each other. Take care of the younglings. You're the oldest. But hey, Anakin offered a smile, something to break the heavy mood. You said you want to help others, right? Yeah, helping quality. Dang, wish that girl lived. Maybe she is alive. I hope she's alive. I hope she didn't. I hope she didn't. Because based on how, I don't know how old she is exactly, but it sounds like she'd probably still be a youngling at the end of the Clone Wars. Maybe even a Padawan. But I really hope she escaped the Jedi Order. I mean, the execution of the Order 66, because that would suck. I'm kind of hoping at the end of this book she leaves the Order, because just like how that saved Ahsoka, I'm hoping that saved her, because I have a hard time thinking that she's alive in the Jedi Order, because there's no way she's escaping that shit. But then again, Cal escaped, so it is possible. I hope she's still alive. I hope we see her again in something. That she's a good kid. It would suck if we learned that she got executed. Chapter 20, Rug Cornum. The fact that it said her name, I think she could possibly... Yeah, that's the thing with these books, especially since this book came out before the Kenobi show. The fact that they're like putting emphasis on this singular youngling might mean that we might see her again. I hope, unless she plays like a very like a sad role in this book, but I think so. It'd be really cool if she did survive and we see an Obi-Wan or like a comic book or something. Rug really hoped Katar would not let the moment get the best of him, especially since the Jedi now held a glowing laser sword in front of him. I said freeze, Katar's voice came over their shared comm channel, just a fraction of a second off from the real-life view she had in her sniper scope. The Jedi emissary stepped back in slow and controlled movements, and though his weapons were still up in a defensive position, his posture showed a complete lack of aggression. Rug had heard plenty about the Jedi Knights, of course. Anyone in any military had, but most of her time in the Neimoidian Special Forces involved black ops, usually in the Outer Rim, protecting or sabotaging supply lines, blockades, and other missions where the needs of the Neimoidians and the needs of the Trade Federation overlap, which meant it usually didn't involve the more proper nature of the Jedi. I heard you, and I am abiding, the Jedi said. A man by the name of Obi-Wan Kenobi, if she remembered correctly from the overheard discussion during their shift earlier today. Nothing official has been passed to them. Guards handling grunt work apparently were on a need-to-know basis. Rug held her rifle steady, though she glanced down at the spectrometer at her feet, the small display of showing that it had finished processing its chemical residue scan. She reached down and quietly attached it to her belt before turning to the unfolding scene. But, he said, projected his voice out much louder, and despite the lack of light, she saw his silhouette turn her away. I mean you no harm. He spoke directly to her, not Katar. The Jedi took one hand off his blade's hilt, holding its palm up, then methodically backed up several steps, his angle twisting to likely keep an eye on both Rug and her younger partner. Katar shifted, and the scope light from the laser sword reflected lines on his face, a clear hardening underneath the angled brim of his standard guard helmet. I am not your enemy, the Jedi said, this time in a calm and quiet voice meant probably for Katar. Part of being an elite commando meant reading people, seeing their actions before they happen through any possible ticks or tells. Here the Jedi offered a calm neutrality, and though this might have been due to their supposed mystical powers, Rug got a hint of sincerity from the situation. Still, nothing was certain, especially not under certain galactic circumstances. It's illegal for anyone to be below the fog without permit at this time of night, she yelled, especially in the investigation site. They stood still, the hum of the Jedi's weapon captured clearly over Katar's comm channel, until the howl of the planet's wildlife broke through. Fog rolled over the wrecked building, though the glowing blade emitted enough light to remain invisible in her scope without thermal vision or other augmented views. I don't have a permit, the Jedi shouted back, but I am conducting an investigation. We know who you are, Katar growled. You are here to cover up the evidence of the Republic's sabotage. He stepped closer, his pistol up, and despite the dim conditions, the barrel of the weapon showed a clear tremble. You're trying to get away with murder and destruction. I am on an liar. The entire cycle of emotions constantly burned through Qatar since their first visit to Katasora, and investigating on the surface didn't change anything. Anger, grief, despair, concentration, and then back again. Right now, the Jedi emissary may have encountered them at the exact wrong moment in the cycle, and Qatar's voice clearly showed where his mind was. After their guard shifted today, he promised to get some rest before the evening investigation. Something she'd offered to Kassar to keep him constructively occupied instead of blasting training droids. Though based on the sudden shift in his demeanor, she had a sneaking suspicion that he'd sought the company of the Separatist agent instead of taking a nap. "You are here to Qatar," she yelled. She knew enough about the Jedi to understand that their weapons cut through anything, and if her partner didn't realize that, then she'd fill him in later. For now, she needed to dial down the situation. Patience. He deserved a moment to speak. "You, Jedi, you better have a good reason for being here." The Jedi glanced her way, a thoughtful look visible through her scope, and his voice carried that through as well. "I am on an investigation on behalf of the Republic, at the invitation of the Trade Federation. I am of the firm belief that this disaster was not caused by the Republic, and my goal is to prove that and find the true culprit." "You were down here earlier with the others." Qatar shook the pistol at him. He must have talked with Dooku's agent, because even Rugg did not know that. "Why sneak here at night, with no oversight, no official escort?" "My investigation," he searched for the right words, and Rugg appreciated the careful consideration being applied here. "My investigation required more time. Given the level of bureaucracy accompanying me, the window for an efficient process was shrinking. It was critical to scan and assess tonight, given the rate of decay for evidence in such a harsh environment." Bureaucracy. Rugg wondered if that meant the Separatist woman. She seemed the troublemaking type. "Do you actually believe this Jedi?" Qatar yelled over her. "The actual guilty party doesn't matter to me," he continued, maintaining a calm and deliberate voice. "I believe the Republic is innocent, but if it turns out to be some unknown faction claiming to serve the Republic, so be it. Or if it was done on behalf of the Separatists, all I want is the truth." And he paused, then pointing at her with his free hand. "I can see you are investigating as well. I watched the way you studied the remains. It appears this is what we both want. So perhaps we can work together." The hand holding his weapon stretched up in a controlled motion, raising it high for both Neimoidians to see. The shining blue blade quickly snapped back into the hilt, leaving them in a near dark. A new light appeared, a personal lamp beaming from Qatar's shoulder that changed the complexion of the scene. A swift change in the shadows caught Rook's eye, enough to show that the switch in the light might have caught the attention of something. Rugg changed the scope to thermal vision, and the clarity of the real-world view became pixelated, burnt figures against a blue backdrop. The Jedi slowly lowered his hilt to place it on the cool ground of the planet's surface. "I work in good faith." He raised both hands, then stood and took 2 steps back. And then he saw it, her shoulders tense, locking the rifle into safe position, and her finger ready for the right moment, the right shot. "This is a token of..." A flash erupted from Rugg's rifle, and through her scope she watched as the Jedi didn't flinch, didn't even move. The blaster bolt whizzed a meter over him, soon followed by a beastly howl that rang into the night. With that, Rong swung her sniper rifle onto her back and began bounding down, landing on the debris that crumbled upon impact and vaulting forward over chunks of broken buildings. She hit the surface floor running, hurtling over objects while her focus shifted from Jedi to large, furry creature with 4 stumpy legs writhing on the group, yelping in pain. Had it been upright, it would have towered over Qatar and the Jedi, but here it needed help. "I need a med pack," she yelled. "Qatar, get out some rations as well." Her feet pounded dust clouds floating up and mixing into the fog with each step, and she charged past the Jedi over the fallen beast. "Feed it the rations while I patch the wound," she yelled, taking the med pack from Qatar in a mid-stride. Qatar moved to the animal, its girthy belly heaving with each breath and large ears tilting forward. Corgi beasts are gentle, but they get hungry. "There you are, girl. We'll get through this." It caught the aroma of the rations, and soon it nibbled out of Qatar's hand while Rugg addressed a shoulder wound with Bacta and laser sutures. "This whole mess has affected the local wildlife. It's not their fault their food chain has been disrupted. Normally they're very docile," she said as the Jedi came over as well, one hand on the creature's forehead, and seconds later its whine became a controlled, steady breath. They lose their minds a little when they get hungry. Eat a Snickers. You're not yourself when you're hungry. You're saying it's dinner? The Jedi asked. Never doubt the appetite of corgi beasts, Rugg said with a laugh. She moved over, giving it scratches under its neck, loose hairs tossing into the hair, or the moment they shed. You're a good girl, aren't you? The corgi beast nudged the sniper with his black nose, and then looked at the Jedi before Qatar tossed an open ration into the distance. It limped away, the scent of food drawing it from the trio. My name is Obi-Wan Kenobi, he said in a soft voice as he watched the corgi beast trail off into the midst of Kid Moria. I am the emissary from the Jedi Order, representing the Republic. Rog Quarnam, she said, exhaling as she got back on her feet, and I have much less exciting credentials than you, but perhaps more liked by animals. My enthusiastic friend here is Qatar Noor. I was supposed to be training him. She gave a short laugh, and Qatar replied with a sour expression. And from Obi-Wan's raised eyebrows, she caught a bit of empathy at the give and take of their relationship. Do all guards carry sniper rifles and custom self-equipment? He said, gesturing at her formatting maroon-tinted armor. If they're good enough, Rook pointed at the doormat laser sword still sitting on the ground. While I certainly believe in the idea of neutrality and independence, I also want the truth. She picked up the hilt. Taking a moment to assess how much small piece of craftsmanship carried so much energy, even weighed more than she expected. And I too believe in good faith, she said, handing the weapon back to its owner. Obi-Wan took it before nodding in approval, eyes locking with Rugg the entire time, though she noticed he avoided the glare coming from the Qatar. And that's the end of chapter 20. Everyone goes a little crazy about food. That is very true, even in space. Even in space, the creature is like, I'm hungry, so I'm gonna just kill you right now. Maybe that's why Palpatine was so mean. Maybe he was constantly hungry. Maybe if Palpatine eat better, he wouldn't have been so mad. Vader couldn't. I remember in one of the books, I think it explained Vader couldn't eat properly, so he has to take his thing to like tubes and shit. So he must have been frustrated. He can't even have good food anymore. We making good progress. For what, with the book? I think so, because we're at what, chapter 21? We only got 30 more chapters. At that pace, I think we'll definitely finish well before Friday, I think. Chapter 21, Anakin Skywalker. Anakin ran, his eyes scanning. His boots thumped against the metal deck plate of the cruiser, passing by as Theo and Sparks addressed a group of the 302nd next to the stacks of bacta crates slated for distribution dawn on Langston. Clones prepped the mission, but they wouldn't be any help to him right now. Not unless they'd been babysitting. Still, he asked, and they replied with a simple, not recently, sir. Have you seen Mil Ableth, the Zabrak youngling? Anakin asked another helmetless clone down the hall, who merely shook his head. His search continued, sweeping through the ship's security cams, methodically working his way through. Finally, in a small storage room, he located the Urban Wenherd, showing off her acrobatic lightsaber techniques with her Shoto blades. She must have run out of ways to entertain them as well, except Mil wasn't with them. Where's Mil? Anakin asked, the question coming out more like a demand than he'd intended. She is meditating, the Urban said, after landing from a gravity-defying sprint along the wall. She withdrew both her blue and green blades and then tossed her long hair back, adjusting the large, glare-reducing spectacles strapped around her head. Storage room off the main corridor. Master Wenherd, the younglings yelled in unison, leading to a sigh that caused Anakin to smirk. It was her turn to deal with this. Of course, Mil's meditation corner happened to be the last place Anakin looked, and by the time he found her, his breath paced at a light huff. He took a moment to center himself, both physically and mentally, then spoke to the meditating youngling. Mil, he asked softly. Master, she said, opening her eyes. Are you connecting with the Force? I didn't sense any disruptions. Trying to let it in, but it's more like keeping it at bay. Her gaze dropped to the floor. There's a lot of talk about battles here. I have something to show you. You should come with me. With that, Anakin turned, his robe swirling with the movement, and he motioned her forward. We have to catch the transport before it goes. She sprinted to catch up, then tried to match his steps, except he marched with focus, so much that he didn't realize she lagged until they were halfway to the launch bay. Not only did she struggle to keep up with him, she also stayed quiet the entire time, awaiting instructions. Of course, the younglings trusted him on a level beyond Padawans. We're going to the surface. I was just about to head out when I got an idea. The hallway led out into the loud launch bay. Shuttles awaiting loading as troops jogged back and forth, and pulled supplies or checked weapons. What's that, Master? Listen, Anakin said, kneeling down to look at her face to face. I understand how you feel. I was brought to the Order when I was a boy, not a baby. I had a life, friends, my mother. It's a little different from what you've been through, but, he exhaled, trying to find the right words to connect with her. I understand that conflict, what you feel like when you're being pulled in different directions. The way you feel the Force, but you hear it differently than what they tell you at the temple. And that's scary. It makes you want to hide from it. I understand all of it. The last few days flashed through his mind, from the joyride with Padme to his talks with Obi-Wan and the Chancellor, the most important people in his life. I am still seeking my path, but I thought getting you on the surface might help you see with your own eyes, to witness the different ways the Jedi serve the Republic. It's not just lightsabers and fighting. He flagged down the trooper leading his particular transport, a clone known as Sister. Oh shit, is this one of the woman ones? A clone known as Sister that he'd met on an assignment shortly after the secret wedding. She took off her helmet, rows of tightly braided hair falling down over her shoulder. Oh dang, there's a woman clone that's like Omega. That's pretty cool. I think this clone, I remember hearing about this clone in Legends, but I guess she's canon now. They got a woman clone. Yeah, a girl that's a clone. Oh shit, just like Omega. Damn, that's pretty cool. I wonder why we never saw her in the Clone Wars. That would have been dope. We're loading up, General. The supplies are already on the surface. We've just got to distribute them. Hop aboard when you're ready, she said, Sister pointing to the clone troopers waiting in the transfer's open hall, standing still in a line. R2-D2 rolled up to them, beeping chirps of annoyance. Your droid is impatient, sir. I didn't even know R2's on this trip. Oh my god. Oh, dang. My TV wants to give me commercials. No commercials. Stop it. Stop it, TV. No. Yay, ads. This video is sponsored to you by... Damn. Oh yeah, but R2 is here? I didn't know that. And of course, R2 is a very impatient droid. Yeah, he reached out to gently tap R2-D2 on the dome. He gets that way, he turned back to Mill. So what do you think? Up for a ride? Mill looked at the transport. Anakin traced her gaze and saw it locking directly on the clones. We're not soldiers. Why are we leading them? Despite her question, she took a step forward. R2-D2 scooted alongside her and Anakin walked to keep pace. Sister put her helmet back on, lights reflecting off its magenta and blue vertical stripes. Oh wow, so Sister's part of the 501st? Wow. That's crazy. I never saw her. That would have been dope. Then she gave them a quick salute while Mill tried to imitate in return. Such a question had never come into his thoughts before. Perhaps because he'd simply gotten thrown into the fray at Geonosis. In fact, it seemed like many Jedi fell into the immediate lockstep with the clones. They were demanding so much of them that no one pondered who they were, why they were here. That's very true. Maybe if you did, you'd know. What little he knew of the clones came from the battlefield. Though he'd found them to be intelligent, loyal, and often funny in many ways, anything unlike what he expected. Try not to think of them as soldiers or clones. In many ways, they're just like you and me, trying to do some good in the galaxy the best way they know how. Now, he said, he looked up to him, let's go help some people. In chapter 22, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yeah, the Clone Wars did such a good job of like making the clones, humanizing the clones, because before, when it was just episode 3, they were just tools for the Jedi destruction, but then when you actually learn about them, their story becomes so much more nuanced and sad, but also glorious, because you have like great characters. So one of the best shows ever, that's right. Shout out to the Clone Wars. One of the greatest television of all time. I don't care what anybody else tells me. If anybody watches the Clone Wars, they can't tell me they can't be Star Wars fans after that. I freaking love the Clone Wars. Woo! Alright, chapter 22. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Despite their rocky start, Rugg led Obi-Wan to new areas to investigate, going far behind the massive struts that marked severance points all the way to areas that showed collateral damage from the initial blast. She pointed out irregularities in the blast radius, how struts splintered differently, evidence that could mean several different things about the types of explosive compounds used. She also pulled out her own datapad of compiled evidence, including material traces that had since evaporated into the fog and the wind of Cato Nemoidia's surface. That, along with his own accumulated scans and sensor readings, gave him an entire day's worth of material to comb through, and unfortunately no Republic computers for processing, but he figured that out later. The entire time, Qatar stayed silent, an air of suspicion coming from him while they talked. In their 4th-hour investigation, Obi-Wan knew his body was reaching the point of physical exhaustion. I do not know how much about Nemoidian sleep cycles, Obi-Wan said, but I shall return and get some rest soon, if I'm going to be of any use tomorrow. That's not a bad idea, Rugg said. She held up a small vial and poured its contents over the mix of metal, concrete, and stone, something that appeared to be a chunk of strut blown into the side of a building. It bubbled, releasing a neon yellow mixture through the air, visible just enough for her to hold up a scanner to it. Chemical reaction. I'll send you over the results once it's finished. You've done good work without hauling a proper lab with you, Obi-Wan said, scrolling through his datapad. I may not have any of your Jedi powers, but experience does close the gap in some scenarios. Yeah. Qatar said. She said, handing him a device out of her armor's chest pocket. Run process 4C on this with an exposure time of 6 seconds. Understood, the young guard said. He brushed past Obi-Wan as if he weren't even there, then began tapping on his datapad. Surely you didn't learn all about the chemistry and explosives in basic training, Obi-Wan said. Though Qatar stood behind Obi-Wan, he knew the comment caught the guard's attention. I'm just a guard, Rugg said, staying up to stretch her back, trying to teach people like Qatar why our work matters. That is a guard uniform? Rugg squinted at her datapad, though from the way her head tilted, he guessed she considered his question more than her scanner's results. You're inquisitive, Jedi. Part of the job. Rugg let out a thick laugh. This, she patted her maroon body armor, was part of the job too. Nemoidian special ops. Explosives, infiltration, sniper, but now just a guard. She put away the last of her devices and nodded toward their shuttle. Looking for a quieter life? Not necessarily, but sometimes important people think you should be quieter, and there are various ways to accomplish that. They walked in silence, the only sound coming from the crunch of dirt and the breeze beneath their boots. It sounds like you are not satisfied with Nemoidian involvement with the Trade Federation, Obi-Wan said, an honest comment, but given how accommodating Rugg had been over the last few hours, the words came as their own form of bait. That's a very binary view of things. You Jedi do enjoy your rules. Obi-Wan bit his lip at that, and rather than be defensive, he decided to let Rugg continue. I believe the idea of the Trade Federation, when the Republic fails to recognize your homeworld as anything but an asset in shipping and commerce, you become a commodity and a statistic. I'll not let my life be a line item in shipping manifest. With the Trade Federation, Nemoidians finally have a voice. History shows the Republic barely acknowledged our existence until the Trade Federation. The way governments operate, though, that always changes. Qatar spoke up, perhaps for the first time in an hour. Why shouldn't we support the separatist cause? We know our worth, and it's much more than the Republic's claims. Obi-Wan caught a hint of a smile on Rugg's face, though she clearly tried to hide it. We're not talking about the separatists here. Cato Nemoidian is neutral, Rugg said. The Trade Federation is neutral. Neutrality neutrality in the face of oppression is further oppression, Qatar said, which Obi-Wan agreed with to some degree, but probably from the opposite perspective as Qatar. Is it oppression or is it independence, a freedom to choose? Rugg asked, almost like a teacher leading a student to an epiphany. But Qatar hesitated, the bite to his attitude settling as he considered the question. They walked a few more steps in silence before Obi-Wan spoke up. Despite the fact that the question wasn't directed at him, I would say it depends on context, he offered, something for both of them to consider in different ways. They both looked at him, though with different points of view written on their expression and posture. I agree, Rugg said. Context defines everything. I have a friend who thinks like you, Obi-Wan said, the smirk on his face, probably not visible in the dim Caledonian night. I can believe in the Trade Federation without liking its leadership over the past 10 years, and I can recognize the systematic issues within the Republic, but still think that some people within it are reasonable. Even, she said with a chuckle, a Jedi? Katar shot back another comment about how Republic culture was more dangerous than Republic law, and Obi-Wan recognized Rug's responses to it all. Not the specific words or rebuttals, but the way she tried to equally acknowledge and shut down Katar's ire. Well, he had some experience with that in his life. This discourse continued back to their shuttle, a small guard craft that offered little more protection or maneuverability than his own borrowed craft. And while they bickered, Obi-Wan caught sight of a strange hovel behind an alley of the dilapidated block. One more thing to check out before his way back. He considered asking them to come along, especially considering Rug's additional equipment. But something about Katar's mood told him he should leave well enough alone. And the small bunker itself gave off a suspicious feel, a frequency in the force that created an invisible disquiet, along with the fact that the entrance to it sat remarkably clear despite rubble strewn about everywhere else. I'll head back to my ship, he told them. Giving them a farewell wave, they parted ways and boarded their craft. Rug nodded in acknowledgement while Katar stared straight ahead behind the cockpit window. He started his walk ahead, waiting for their shuttle to lift up and disappear into the fog. When he concluded they'd flown far enough away not to detect his movements, he took out his macro binoculars and switched to thermal vision. A safety check of the sheds surrounding the area for any starving corgi beasts that might be lurking for a human-sized snack. With the coast clear, he started forward, and though fatigue weighed down both on his thoughts and movements, this seemed to be anomalous to pass by. End of chapter 22. The Clone Wars and the political agenda of the Jedi. That's something to be. I like how they debate it. Like, they're not supposed to be in this war, but they change over a long time. When I get to the High Republic books, it kind of shows. I think it basically shows like how the Jedi got to this point of being more dogmatic and thinking of the Republic. Because back then they were more free, and that was just like 200 years ago. So when I get to those High Republic books, which are freaking amazing, they're like amazing books. That'll be kind of explaining why they're like this in the first place, which kind of led to their downfall. And Palpatine, as if wisely used that shit against them. I know, right? Damn politics. Even in space, politicians are the worst. Not all of them though. Padme's a politician. She's pretty nice, but most of them are pretty selfish and greedy, which is the reason why this shit's even happened in the first place. But I like the Separatist point of view. That's why the Separatists kind of turned into the rebellion. They just want to be recognized by the Republic. But, you know, the Republic is run by a Sith Lord, so that wasn't going to happen. Chapter 23, Anakin Skywalker. The first 10 crates go to the neighborhood at Sector N11 AI. Anakin said to the helmeted clone trooper in front of him, then met up with the Captain Raptor at Fong Tim Square to split the remaining batch into groups for smaller distribution. Right away, General, the clone saluted, turned to the Juggernaut transport packed with more medical supplies and clones. And be careful of the sand. Oh boy, he hates sand. I've seen worse, but this still gets in the transport's gears. Anakin smirked, thinking of home. Pod racers levitated off the ground, but he certainly worked with his share of wheeled and treaded vehicles during his time. How the Jawas kept their sand crawler rolling, he never quite figured out. Langston's largest continent was mountainous, but with high winds and seasonal torrential rain. Communities sat at the base of mountains, but the weather mix also created an accumulation of blue-tinted sand, just thick enough to be annoying, yet not quite a way of life. Still, it got in the joints of his mechanical hand, and even when he'd covered it with a tight-fitting glove. The convoy away, Anakin removed the glove and tried to blow some of the grit out of his knuckles. C said to no one particular, "No one believes me, but it gets everywhere." He blew again, the cool of his breath tickling the adaptive hardware that translated into a sensory into a sensory feeling, then shook his arm while flexing his fingers. Little bits of sand trickled out, and Anakin could practically hear Padme laughing at him like she had not that long ago when they were hidden away in the Naboo countryside following their wedding on that afternoon. They'd stood barefoot at the lake's edge, and even though Naboo's tranquil countryside proved idyllic, the grains of sand caused a squirmy feeling, a constant shifting to get comfortable. Padme noticed, of course, but because she always strove to understand others, she offered something that encapsulated everything about her. After a few days on Tatooine, I get why you hate sand so much, she said, with a laugh before turning more thoughtful. We come from different places, Annie. It informs so much of how we see the galaxy. That moment was the only good thing to ever happen regarding sand. And here, as he flexed his fingers, he could feel the grip between the servos, adding onto his already out-of-sync feeling. Any emotions come with annoyance of something stuck in the wrong place. He sighed, putting his glove back on. This would require a complete oil soak for the hand later when he had access to the cruiser's repair station, but for now, he'd deal with it. Around him, clones still moved back and forth, some chattering to one another about the most efficient way to mount supplies on the floating dollies, and others remarking on reports of various skirmishes breaking out across the midrim. Anakin looked back over the horizon, a cluster of shattered homes in the distance. Mill was supposed to have accompanied clones on a local drop-off, but the troopers appeared to be coming back without her. He was about to intercept a group of clones with yellow trim painted across their helmets and shoulders when his emergency comm beeped, the counterpart to the one he'd given Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan, I'm here, he said, grabbing it from his belt. Anakin, can you hear me? Semi-loud and semi-clear. Weren't you going to stick to mission parameters? Silence came over the comm, and Anakin didn't know if his joke got stuck somewhere in the digital bits sent across the galaxy or if Obi-Wan simply dodged the question. But then the comm broadcasted a laugh, a short burst that seemed to be the most former master could let loose. Outside of parameters, well, I suppose I've learned something from you after all. Listen, I need your help. I'm sending you an upload of scans and data. I have my suspicions about what it means, but I don't have any way to process it. Send it to me. I'll have R2 look at it. No, R2 interfaces with Republic networks. This can't have any official traces. It needs an information broker. Anakin waited for the oncoming clone troopers to pass him by before responding. General, the lead soldier said with a salute without breaking stride. Information broker? Anakin asked, his voice quieter. Is this what you do in your free time? You know you could watch pod racing with me instead. I won't tell the Jedi Council. The Ethios 700 is coming up. Obi-Wan responded without reaction. We need to act quickly. Contact Dexter Jester on Coruscant in the Cocoa District. He will send you a secure channel to upload. Tell him it's from me. Wait, doesn't he own the diner? How does that come into play? Dex will take care of it. I need a fast turnaround. I have less than a day to put together my findings. Static popped over the comlink, and with that, Obi-Wan was gone. Something didn't quite add up, and even though Mill was still wandering somewhere among the dilapidated buildings, he owed it to Obi-Wan to get this done as soon as possible. Trooper, Anakin called out. The clone group stopped, all turning around. Is the shuttle ready to go? Back to the cruiser? Not yet, sir, one of the clones replied, pointing to their transport. We're still unloading supplies. Anakin looked back at the area where Mill had ventured out. I'll need to get back soon and secure a comm channel in a private room. Right away, sir. We'll make preparations, the clone responded without question, without hesitation. As a Padawan, Anakin's requests and commands would have come with the need to double-check with clone commanders or Jedi Knights, but here they were the obedience of hierarchy, something that created a direct chain of command. What a strange position to be in. Anakin reminded himself of what he told Mill, that the clones were just people trying to do their part, and staying cognizant of what would be necessary given the power of the rank. Anything else, sir? Not from you. I just gotta go pick up something I lost. Anakin walked forward, and though Mill's presence usually echoed a low-level anxiety, he didn't get any ripples like that, and that in itself might have meant that Mill had found a focus, an unexpected calm. Strange. I'll be back soon, Anakin said. Understood, the trooper saluted, his posture straightening. General? Gotta love the clones. So much sand. It's funny, too, because Luke, growing up on the planet, he was never a slave, so his memories of sand is actually pretty fun. So him and his father have two different views of sand, which I think is pretty funny. Luke! I can't really see Luke again, too, as a 10-year-old boy. That should be fun. Family beach episode. I think Anakin will be the only one who's hating sand in that whole thing. Freaking Leia, Luke, and Padme would love it. He's the only one being grumpy. He's like, I want to get off this beach. Get me off this damn beach. Chapter 24. Mill Alabeth. Strange that here, amid the devastation of war, Mill felt at peace. Not when she looked around at the broken buildings or walked alongside the armored soldiers, who all looked exactly the same without their helmets. Ooh, excuse me. Sure, they had little differences, hair, scars, some even had tattoos. But still, all those same faces and voices, all with massive rifles. And they were so obedient. Anakin had revealed that he'd grown up enslaved, and now he was a Jedi commanding clones bred for war. The whole thing unnerved Mill. Yet, when she asked the clones to leave her for a few extra minutes, she'd be given space, and suddenly the universe made sense to her. In fact, she cracked open the door to the Force, and rather than it flooding her, she found herself in its currents, letting it guide her to kneel down, open her med pack, and stretch out her feelings, just like they taught her at the temple. The family of Grail siblings remained quiet, perhaps not too trusting of the large soldiers that roamed their neighborhood. The scars of violence proved to be too unsettling, despite the fact that their loud shuttles and huge transport carried supplies. With this family, though, only two things mattered: the cough of an infant too young to speak, and the leg of the eldest sibling where something had caused the normally scaly light gray skin to turn soft and oozing for the infant. The Force guided Mill with the proper time to smack its back between its two shoulders and scoots after it coughed, ejecting the dust that had tickled its throat. Connecting with the Force, it turned out, had its advantages. As for the eldest, it would require something more. I backed this, she said, tapping the canister at her feet. Though initiates only learned rudimentary first aid by her age, one thing she discovered was that Bacta often did the healing part on its own. It was the fear and pain that needed to be managed. Mill approached her, a 30-year-old girl named Rakura, who was a mere adolescent given the long lifespans of the Garrow. Scared is, Rakura said, and a tremble ran through her thick neck ridges, sweat caking her thick black hair. Limb pain feel. Bacta helped not enough. Mill nodded, understanding the broken basic. Above her, blaster bolts had torn holes in buildings. If the building still stood, some of them didn't, only their foundations remaining. Dust tossed in the air, harsh enough that it got in her hair and tickled her horns. On her arms, flecks of Langston sand covered her tan wrists. In the giant temple, even on the cruiser, war seemed so far away, but here it almost drew Mill out. Rakura moaned in pain, the infection of her leg likely making her delirious. She trembled when Mill put a cool cloth to her forehead, kicking out at the youngling. The commotion stirred the baby, a cry that quickly turned into coughing but settled with a few breaths, the debris and grit no longer in its lungs. One thing at a time, Mill closed her eyes and looked through the Force. The city's residents appeared in swirling colors, not quite the level of suffering she felt on Kael Nemoidia. This was calmer, like they'd gotten used to their situation. But here Rakura spiked in her vision shades of red in the form of a Garrow girl. Mill put a hand over Rakura's head, then breathed, and in that breath, an instinct arose as if the Force were a warm blanket, and Mill draped it around Rakura's ravaged body. I will help you, she whispered without prompting or thought, and as if on command, the girl's trembling stopped, her breath steadying. Mill blinked, and awakened similar to snapping out of deep sleep. It took several seconds for her to return to the present, recent actions already a hazy memory. She knew what happened, but how and why seemed inscrutable. But Rakura still needed practical aid. Mill stood up and applied Bacta in swift movements. The wound fizzed as the Bacta's microbiotics activated immediately upon contact. She'll need to be still for a few minutes, she said to the family before going back over, putting her hand over Rakura's forehead again. Rest, she said in a clear, direct voice, her eyes closed, letting herself sink deep enough onto the Force that all the surroundings distress lit her senses like beacons with a 1,000-meter radius. Then she heard a voice through the ether, a chanting-like rhythm. Mill, Mill, Mill. It was Anakin. Shaking out of her trance, Mill stood up, the tails of her Jedi tunic tinted by layers of Langston blue dust. R2-D2 chirped and whirled next to her, and though she didn't yet understand the astromech, it felt like a lecture about paying attention. Master Skywalker, we need to go. Why didn't you come back with the clones? He squinted, finally realizing the scene around him. Next to Mill, Rakura's siblings scooted back in the shadow of the tall Jedi. They needed help, Mill said, and they were afraid when the clones were here. They had just seen the clones fighting battle droids a week ago, and the battle did this. She gestured to the broken buildings around them, to their home. She pointed down at the resting girl, now with closed eyes and deep, regular breaths. She needed Bacta and something to settle her nerves. You did this? Anakin asked, kneeling down to inspect the situation more closely. I'm sorry, Master Skywalker. I know it's disobeying commands. It's just, he could see. How could she possibly explain this strange ability? The way hurt and agony became part of her field of vision like a thermal sensor on a scope. They needed help and they were scared. They already lost their parents in the fighting. We need to go, but Anakin said softly, you did the right thing. You're not mad? Mill didn't mean to respond with such surprise, but even the Padawans she'd been around seemed to so stuck on the rules, and that came from all the other older Jedi. But Anakin was different. She knew this from their first conversation. The Jedi aren't perfect, and sometimes we have to work around that. His head tilted, and a thoughtful look on his face. You connected with the Force. I let it in, yes, Mill said with a nod, almost an affirmation to herself. Do you see? Anakin asked, taking her hand, and she did in a way. Not the way the Jedi used the Force to jump really high or knock things down, but the connection between living things, the way they were all tiny specks across the same massive universe. For the first time in possibly her entire life, she understood. Mill nodded, prompting Anakin to smile. I knew you would. Now, before we leave, he pointed to the open medpack on the ground. Anything else they might need? Dang, I love this girl. Screw the rules. I agree. Screw the rules. Anakin was born in the wrong era. Before, during the High Republic, as I'm reading it now, like, the Jedi were less adherent on the rules, and they were a lot more flexible. So, and it's, like, when we'll get to that book, you'll see, like, the stuff that's happening, but it hasn't really gotten to that transition of why they stopped being more flexible and being more dogmatic, but these Jedi are so stuffy, bro. I can imagine, like, being a kid and you're like, bro, I can't even, like, think properly. If Anakin was born back then, a few hundred years before, I don't think he would fall to the dark side. Because he'd be actually to actually say his feelings. Anakin really could have had a way different path. I know, right? That poor Anakin, bro. I really feel for him. He was just born in the wrong era. In chapter 25, Obi-Wan Kenobi. We got hour 3. We're making great time. Sunrise on Cato Nemoidia lacked the colors usually found on other planets. Each planet's unique atmospheric conditions and chemical makeup had given Obi-Wan some stirring views in his time. Bright and bold colors that looked like the Force had taken hold and burst into the physical realm in the form of brilliant splashes across the galaxy. But this planet was draped in fog, and in the early mornings on the surface as well have been Coruscant's lower levels, shadows and structures combined with thick mists to observe most of the light, turning things mostly into an ashen gray outside of an occasional orange glow from trees. It provided good cover as Obi-Wan sneaked down to get a closer look at the strange bunker he discovered right when Rugg and Katar took off. There were, of course, plenty of half-shattered buildings of all sizes, so another one the size of a speeder garage shouldn't have seemed out of place. But this one, the way the double doors sat nearly together without a trace of damage, it all appeared a little too intact for something that had withstood the massive shock wave of the structure crashing on the surface. Not to mention the unusual wake of the Force he sensed from the bunker. It had come and gone in a flash, but all that together pulled him to explore further. A bunker that, of course, had been locked during that late night. A sealed door was always a cause for greater concern. Now he returned various scanners and sensors packed with him. More important, he picked up several hunks of raw meat from a local market. He waited behind the shed, sitting quietly on a cracked retaining wall, then stretched out in the Force to scan for any corgi beasts. It didn't take long to sense the region's natural wildlife. Obi-Wan tossed the first hunk of meat in the direction of the nearest corgi beast, then another, a mere 10 meters out. The third right in front of the shed's door. Obi-Wan assessed his surroundings, first with his eyes and ears, then with the Force. With things clear, he reached back and thrust his hand forward into the air, a telekinetic propulsion whipping through the space and causing a massive V-shaped dent in the door. The dim surroundings lit in a brilliant blue as Obi-Wan's lightsaber gave a snap hiss and came to life. He pierced the hinge on one side of the door, melting it through it until it snapped off, then gripped the door through the Force and pulled the cord with the severed hinge down, the metal groaning as it bent. Sweat formed on Obi-Wan's brow, the door piece stubbornly warping slower than he would like, and it gradually twisted until it created a hole big enough to crawl through. I hope it was a circle, and damage that looked close enough to impact from wildlife to cover his tracks. One more scan around showed the area to be safe outside of a sniffing corgi beast, and Obi-Wan could consider the animal's rough distance to the bait one more time before climbing in. His boots landed on the metal floor with a clang, the space empty enough to carry the sound. Little light made it through, so Obi-Wan activated his lightsaber again to get a better look. On one end sat a large locked case about a meter wide. Obi-Wan tugged at the lid for a good measure. On the other, a small comm station appeared to be set up, a portable configuration sitting on a makeshift table along with a battery source, perhaps the kind usually manufactured to go into starfighters. It was enabled though, and between the clean setup and the system's status lights and power indicators, it clearly had been established recently. Obi-Wan activated his interface, though the data log was blank. He almost began searching its database for deleted records when he noticed a small datapad plugged into its sides. The datapad lit up a card-sized device too small for its own screen that instead projected out a hologram of information. Obi-Wan blinked several times to make sure he read it correctly. Then he read it again and again. He checked the details one more time before scrolling through different tabs of information, but rather than provide a clearer context to the findings, every passing word and number only amplified the mounting sense of dread growing in his gut. He took a breath and centered himself. After all, he had a job to do, and the Republic was counting on him. The display showed an analysis of bomb debris, explosive blast patterns, and structural damage, all side by side with the same type of equipment used by bomb squads in clone battalions. Schematics scrolled by with matching engines, real-world evidence juxtaposed with designs from the Ministry of Science. Each successive screen of information broke down the connections in more detail, creating further links to the Republic. The anxiety in his gut grew, though he let the feelings pass and considered the bigger picture. If this data made a Jedi Master feel so much unease, it surely would be damning for an Neimoidian audience mourning in a catastrophe. That propelled him back to constructive accusation, his mind starting to consider ways forward. Though things certainly look bad for the Republic, many different ruses could be at play. The data itself could be falsified. The comparisons might be disinformation. The culprit may not have actually had ties to the Republic. Though several different paths forward played out in his head, they all started with the same step. He brought along Anakin's comment for an emergency. This constituted exactly that. He pulled it off his belt and sent a signal far across the galaxy to Anakin. Obi-Wan, this better be good. We just got the younglings to settle down. Anakin, he said, I have one more thing for you to send to Dex for analysis. Didn't I just send you Dex's findings? Which was true, but those findings came in the form of results from various scans and measurements. More for processing than anything else, simply hints, not the hard, clear evidence he held before him. This is different. Tell him the entire war may hinge on this. He can't get this wrong. Anakin's cheeky tone hardened, and Obi-Wan could practically see his eyes narrowing in serious thought. What have you found? A datapad of unknown origin, tucked away in a hidden bunker on the surface. Its content shows a clear link to Republic materials and protocols. It's false, Anakin said quickly. It has to be false. Someone is trying to trick you. That's what I need you to prove. Obi-Wan opened the access port on the back of the datapad and then connected it to the comlink. I'm sending you everything on here. Do not tell anyone about this. Not the clones, not the Jedi Council. This information cannot have any possibility of getting out until we determine its source and validity. Are you sure, keeping this from the council? Such a question surprised Obi-Wan. It was a reasonable thing to ask, though having Anakin of all people ask it caught him off guard. Perhaps his former apprentice was maturing after all. The information is too volatile. The local government already has suspicions. Excuse me. We must keep any official communication out of this until we have definitive proof that it is falsified. Understood. Anakin went silent, though the transmission channel remained open. What will you do with the data pad? I'm not sure yet. Leaving it here wasn't an option. It had to be safeguarded, but he couldn't carry it the whole time. Not with the possibility of encountering guards and officials. Every choice comes with an inherent risk. What if, Anakin paused, his voice lowering, what if you destroy it? Obi-Wan wanted to be shocked at such a suggestion. Extreme measures like that dipped into the deceptive ways that led the separatist mentality in the first place. But the truth was he considered such a thing. In a time when Jedi planned military operations, Padawans became soldiers, and a clone army appeared out of nowhere. All of the clear delineations of roles, of protocols, of morality itself suddenly disappeared, leaving only a fuzzy definition of what right and wrong were supposed to be. I have thought about it, he said, as much an admission to himself as to Anakin, especially since I'm sending you the data. But no, we need to keep the original intact. He switched off its glowing holographic projection and assessed the device itself. I think it's small enough to fit into that secure case you gave. Wait, Anakin said, nothing in is coming through my end. Blast it, Obi-Wan looked up at the bunker's ceiling. Though the layers of debris, mist, mountainous arches, and still suspended cities of Zara probably caused more interference than a simple layer of metal. I'll need to get off the surface. Stand by while I get back up there. Okay, I'll be waiting. Keep that safe until you can send me a copy. Agreed. I'll get you up there as fast as I can. Kenobi out. The comlink beeped. Then Obi-Wan took one last look around the bunker. The communications terminal, the lock case, all of it would have to wait for further investigation. Right now, his priority was getting back into the comm range. Obi-Wan considered a few pieces of bait he had remaining for the corgi beast. He kept one in the pouch in case of an encounter any wildlife on his way back to his craft. Then, threw the remainder by the door. Within seconds, a shuffling noise stirred in the debris down cracked alleyway, and Obi-Wan departed, reassured that the local wildlife would cover his tracks. Square. Okay, Barris. Square is greater than circle. How dare you? How dare you? That is not the Jedi way. You must make it a circle. If you make it a square, then you're Barris and you're a traitor. The last time Obi-Wan was in a bar, he nudged a young man to go home and rethink. Oh my god. Circle, too much effort. What do you mean? No. No, it's not. It's a lie. I love that. I love that this is the last time Obi-Wan was in a bar, he nudged a young man to go home and rethink his life. Oh my god. A lot of deep cuts in here for the movies. Then severed the arm of a would-be assassin. Well, that hadn't happened too long ago. The war had stopped giving any meaning to time, making the immediate task seem excruciatingly infinite, while the days counted quickly. Had they gone from greeting Sarah Madala in her apartment to being thrown into the middle of a war with all of its skirmishes and subterfuges. In such a short period indeed, the war had escalated so fast that the quiet moments to ask how and why they... What's that? What the hell? Oh, there we go. Indeed, the war had escalated so fast that the quiet moments to ask how and why they got there were proved rare. Well, I think it's the background of the voices. I'm like, am I going crazy? So when they arrived, he took advantage. Obi-Wan sat at the bar, allowing himself a moment's peace to consider it all. Once back on Zara's streets, he successfully transmitted the data to Anakin, who promised to get in touch with Dex as soon as possible. He then hidden the device in a secure case with the comlink before leaving for the rest of the glamorous part of Zarya. Only now did he have time to ruminate. The war, Dooku, the clones, the mystery data, and he gave himself to have a drink. If the locals knew who he was or why he come to the planet, it didn't seem like they cared, at least not in this particular pub that Rugg had suggested. Perhaps it had to do with its location, a neighborhood buried far off by one of Zarya's struts and far from the center of the government's ornate buildings and brightly lit commercial district. In this wall, stuffy room, a mix of Nemoidians and off-worlders sat shoulder to shoulder, a thick burning cloud of some type of smoked spice trailing through the air. The wall of chatter blanketed sound enough that he almost didn't notice Rug sitting down next to him, still in her commando outfit, but without the outer layer of maroon armor. Your apprentice isn't here, Obi-Wan pointed at the empty stool next to him. I saved 2 spots. He seems like he could use a drink or 2. I needed a break, she said with a laugh. He's a bit moody these days. What's your word for them? She flipped a coin at the bartender, a different currency than Standard Republic credit chip. Padawan, Obi-Wan had asked the question as a means of casual conversation, though it came with the benefit of stalling as he weighed, bringing up what he'd seen earlier. Rug carried herself differently than Qatar and definitely venturous, wary, weathered, but held by a strong moral compass. Would that be enough for her to accept the revelation of the mystery datapad without an overreaction? He bit down on his lip while considering the alternatives, including the possibilities of simply not telling Rug. My own apprentice actually was recently promoted. He's off on his own now, trying to save the galaxy through willpower alone. Rug laughed as the bartender slid over a drink so roughly that it spilled out into her long green fingers as she caught it. How long until reality hits him? He may even be more stubborn than Qatar. She shook her head, taking down half of her drink in one gulp. Lucky us, right? She asked. He's a good kid, just caught up in all. She gestured around them. I'm trying to keep him away from Ventress. She's a little too eager if you ask me. I'm not terribly fond of any agent of Dooku's. See, at least you're honest with me, she said, taking a smaller sip. I have findings for you, as I for you. Well then, Rug held up her remaining drink. Obi-Wan clinked his glass against hers and then took a sip. It's not much to go on. Further scans. We've lined up some more security recordings with the simulation to try to identify the exact chemical mixture for the blast radius. Explosion, heat, the sort of stuff. Take a look. She slid a data pad his way. Though he didn't pick it up, instead focusing on his drink, she looked his way, then back at her own glass, then back at him. I do, she started before looking all around the room. I do have a lead. Obi-Wan immediately thought of Anakin, somewhere across the galaxy getting information from Dex. Obi-Wan said he wanted the truth. He said that to Rug, to the Jedi Council, to Palpatine, to Dooku. But right now, he didn't necessarily want the truth. He wanted Anakin to report that the information on the datapad was falsified somehow, or out of context, or something that would not link the Republic to such morally bankrupt standards. And Rug was her lead. The same information? Was that possibly even her bunker? It is only a lead. I need to run further analysis. Getting discreet access to the labs right now is difficult. Is it definitive? We'll find out. Rug looked down at the amber fizzling liquid in her glass. I don't want to bias your investigations, so forget I said anything for now. Could be nothing. What about you? Nothing to make a strong case either way. He pulled out his own datapad, the one with Dex's report on scans and measurements, and made the decision right then to omit any mention of the other one hidden in his quarters, the one with potentially damning evidence. Trace elements found in the common explosives. Blast zones representative of 7 different types of explosive designs. Destructive capabilities found on the black market but also common in many militaries. And my research shows no chatter about Kingdom Moidia among bounty hunters or spice miners, he said, leaving out any detail of making any transmissions. That's forensic evidence. You don't have any leads? Rug asked with a heavy sigh. They looked at each other, noise from the pub creating a tornado of sound. Glass clinking, people of all different species shouting, laughter and claps coming in from all corners of the cramped room. Somehow life moved on here, even though each of these people probably felt the toll of Katasura. He asked himself one final time if he should mention the mysterious datapad, and once again he resisted. Not with what it revealed, nor how he found it. He simply needed more time. Not that I can speak of, no. Then that's it, she said, shaking her head. Thousands dead, unfathomable damage, and all we have are some chemical readouts and a lead that may be nothing. I have full faith in the truth, Obi-Wan said. Oh boy. Though at the moment, Obi-Wan's not perfect. Though at the moment, such a claim felt like a bit of a stretch. We just need to trust each other. Rug gave a quiet chuckle. Oh, I forgot. You Jedi are peacekeepers. I admire your optimism. To trust, she said, holding up her nearly empty glass. I have a bad feeling about this. Obi-Wan raised his in return, then spoke softly. almost as much for himself as for her. Without trust, we have nothing. Without truth, we have nothing. We must have faith in it. And that was a much part of him as his connection to the Force. Truth, I'll let you in on a secret. You know who forgets the truth? Rug asked, the ridge above her left eye raised. People like me. You never see us, but that's what we do. I've killed bad people and I've killed good people. People who deserve it and people whose only mistake was that the Trade Federation felt they got in the way. You know what I realized? What's that? He asked, finishing his drink. Almost everyone deserved it, to some degree. The group blocking shipping lanes in the Outer Rim, maybe they're doing it to claim a bigger stake for the right reason, to help overturn some injustice that affected their planet. But the other side, the blockade delays the shipment of medical supplies to a planet facing famine. Population that will never meet, all hurting one another. Without ever thinking about it, we're connected, every one of us in the galaxy. Rug's fingers circled the rim of her glass. For every gain, someone else has a loss. Justice doesn't really exist, not for everyone. I'm sorry you feel that way, Obi-Wan said, sincerely and without bite. Part of him understood her. He really did. He had seen planets, systems, entire populations deal with injustice. Her words carried a logic, and he recognized it. He simply chose not to give in to the cynicism. But they had lived very different lives. When my government told me to kill, she tapped a finger against the bar, I killed, because almost every one of my targets deserved it. One way or another, but not the people on Katasura. They were living their lives. Kayla the Moida is neutral. Her body slumped over the bar, red eyes squeezed shut. Kayla the Moida is neutral, she said again. We will get to the truth. Obi-Wan's mind returned to the mystery datapad, the damning evidence. He wanted to will it into something that cleared the Republic, but a shift came in him, a recognition that Rug was right. The truth was bigger than the Republic's needs. If it turns out to be difficult and ugly, then we will still turn that into justice. We just need time. Then what? That doesn't bring back the people who fell to the surface. Does that honor them? Does that do right by them? They sat in silence, empty drink glasses in hand. Obi-Wan considered the path ahead. No, it does not, but I believe justice finds a way. It has to. Otherwise, why are we even here? We choose to do the right thing even in the face of so much wrong, because there is no other way. A good minute passed before Rug tossed over another several coins onto the bar and gestured for a refill. The bartender looked at her and she held up 2 fingers. In theory, you're right, but I've seen it firsthand. She stared straight down at her folded arms. This galaxy, it tries to break you. We can never let it do that. We must have hope. Another 2 glasses slid down the bar. She caught both and took one down in a single gulp before handing the second to Obi-Wan. Unfortunately, she said, as she waved at the bartender again, I became numb to hope a long time ago. Damn. That kind of sucked. It's Joe. Bro, it might have been Joe. There are no perfect people. That's very true. Even Obi-Wan's not perfect. I think we'll leave off at chapter 26, which is named Asajj Ventress. So that one will that one we might learn more about our great Zith girl. But yeah, we're making great time. Yeah, we're definitely gonna finish before the Obi-Wan show. So that's perfect. So we'll leave off at chapter 26. So is it 157? Yeah. Alright, I think it's literally just me and you, Beanie. Which is okay because this is meant for you anyway, so But yeah, I'ma sign off. So I hope you're able to sleep properly without any, stuff. Yeah, I guess everyone was busy. Yeah, I guess everyone was busy. But that's alright. I had my D4 here and that's all we needed. The D4 party. So yeah, I'll leave, try and get some sleep. And I'll see you tomorrow. Probably around the same time. Alrighty, I'm actually feeling sleepy. I think the stream helped. Oh, you're welcome. I figured as much. It was very relaxing. Well, that was my idea. I'm glad it helped. I'll see you later. Nighty night. Bye.